This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Yeah, Jack, we're back. It's been 7 days, but we're back. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the International Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack doesn't like when I say we're back, but we are back.
I'll leave the international, just Boxing Writers Association.
Boxing Writers. I get that confused with the International Boxing Hall of Fame, Jack. And speaking of that, even though I don't want to jump right into it, I want to cover the weekend. I love these fall weekends, Jack. I've been doing the happy dance since Michigan annihilated and mutilated Ohio State. My only problem with that is I think Ohio State can still get into the playoff. The Phillies are gone, but boy, those Eagles look pretty good.
You're still having nightmares, Frank, even though Ohio State is locked up. You're worried that they might get paroled and they might come out and they might be after you and win the national championship.
Jack, that would be my biggest nightmare. And for all these Michigan fans that are also doing the happy dance about how we kicked their butt, guess what? As we talked before the show, Alabama embarrassed Georgia in the SEC championship last year. They met a month later for the national championship, and it wasn't. And by the end of the first quarter, you knew the game was over. Now, look, we have some results to catch up on, to preview a couple fights, and at the end, we'll do our hypothetical fights. But, Jack, I want to touch on, the names for the Hall of Fame are going to be introduced next week, right? December 11th?
Yeah, it's sneaking up on us, Frank. I'm not sure is it December 11th. Is that the exact date? But you're very close if that's not the date. Now,
you're a voter for that, right?
I am.
I used to vote in that when I was a member of the Boxing Writers Association. I'm not. It's tough to do. When you make your ballot out, what do you weigh? What's your process? Take us through the process of elimination.
Right. What I do, I call up a very close friend of mine who's considered by many to be the greatest historian in the world, Don Majeski. I mean, I feel I know a fair amount, and most people consider me a historian, but compared to Majeski, he takes it up a couple of levels.
Him and Henry Haskap.
Right, exactly. And Henry is a close friend too. I'll speak to him from time to time. But specifically on the Canastota ballot, I'm going to go over all the candidates with Majeski to see whether something maybe got slipped by me a little bit, like one of the candidates. And obviously the fighters who I saw, I'm familiar with from my era, I'm going to have a very good feel about them, and the non-participants as well. There'll be certain intriguing choices. You'll have a fighter, for example, this is just an example, like a Nicolino Loche. A lot of people consider him a great junior welterweight, but he fought in Argentina exclusively, never left there. You have to consider certain things. Then there's certain fighters who haven't gotten in the Hall of Fame, like a Henry Mask, which I don't understand. He only had one loss in his whole career, and it was later avenged, a decade later, though. Olympic gold medalist, fighter who Mickey Duff said if he was training someone, he'd have no clue to tell him how to fight Henry Mask. You have no more of a compliment than that.
That is high praise. Are you?
And there's certain fighters like Rodrigo Valdez, who I know a buddy Russell Peltz is very high on, who really should be in the Hall of Fame. But
absolutely,
time has forgotten them by certain riders. And this is a sticking point with me. I don't feel everyone who's voting on every category should be voting on it. Okay. People like to get ballots, but some of the writers who aren't familiar with everyone on the
They
ballot,
check off the names they know.
haphazardly, right? It's a recognition fact. If a name jumps out at you, oh, I heard of that name, and they haven't heard of other names, they're going to, put a check mark next to it, and it's just the way it goes. Listen, if I, for example, Frank, some of the novice guys, if they had a choice to vote between Rocky Graziano and Stanley Ketchel, it might be a close vote, even though
Yeah, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, even though both belong in the Hall of Fame because you consider the name is Fame, Hall of Fame. Tony Zale, Marvin Hagler. It's hard to compare.
But are you of the belief? Because I've heard some people say this, and it applies to the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, I guess the NHL. That if you have to debate it, they're not a Hall of Famer. Like we've had this argument countless times about Ingemar Johansson. We have to debate that. To me, if we have to really debate it and make a case, I would lean towards no. And I do that with fighters also, but that's an opinion that everybody looks at differently. But what do you think is the criteria? I'm going to tell you my criteria. I want to know who you fought, when you fought them, and how it turned out. I mean, we can't give Larry Holmes credit for beating Muhammad Ali, just like we can't give Joey Giardello credit for beating Ray Robinson. So to me, the truth detector is your opposition.
Well, Frank, what I judge partly on in the beginning, does one monster victory jump out at me? What's the defining moment of a fighter's career? Muhammad Ali, he had these monster victories. Sonny Liston, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, monster victories.
But Jack, he's an anomaly. He's an anomaly. I mean,
I'm going to give you a name who's not in the Hall of Fame, who should be in, and you might disagree. He hasn't been in yet, and I don't know, will he ever get in? Maybe he gets in this year, maybe he never gets in. Ricky Hatton. And you might say, Ricky Hatton, he's not really that good. But you have to consider this, Frank. You used the word international before. It's the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And we tend to look at it, you and I, whether we like to admit it or not, from a United States perspective, because we live here. A fighter like Barry McGuigan, he was the ultimate man, in Ireland. He was so ridiculously big at Ireland at one time. They had a war and they called a truce to watch him fight. Okay? Imagine that. Ricky Hatton in England was so famous off the wall, and he did have the monster victory over Costa Zoo. And
a faded Costa Zoo, but yes.
No, it wasn't a faded Costa Zoo.
He was faded, Jack. He went, tens of fences by that time?
Costa Zoo, there was nothing to hint that his performances had slowed down when he lost to Hatton. It was a question of styles, but whatever. But the point is, Hatton is extremely famous in his part of the world. Okay? And you mentioned
Jack, I don't care about famous. I don't care about that. Kim Kardashian is pretty hot, but she's not one of the hottest chicks in the world.
It's Hall of
Okay, so everybody looks at it differently. To me, Ricky Hatton, Barry McGuigan, I saw their careers. They're not Hall of Fame fighters. They had stellar careers. They're not Hall of Fame fighters. Arturo Gatti is not a Hall of Fame fighter. Ray Mancini, I love him. I actually tried to fight like him when I boxed. He's not a Hall of Famer. Hall of Fame, Jack, to me, it's the best of the best. It's elite. It's Peyton Manning. It's Muhammad Ali. It's guys like that. I don't care about their popularity.
I agree with you 100%.
No, you don't, because you're fighting for Ricky Hatton.
No. I agree with you 100% that ideally that's the way I would like it to be. But the reality is it's not. Look at all the sports and look at the guys who get in the baseball and the football Hall of Fame. We want the Willie Mazes, the Hank Aaron's, the Mickey Mantles.
The Pete Roses, too.
Pete Roses, too. Okay. But you're getting lesser caliber guys who are getting in there at this point. Now, they expanded the ballot. Maybe a Keith Hernandez gets in. Maybe Don Mattingly gets in. Harold Baines got in one year. That created the controversy. I know what you're saying. You want to see the immortals get in. But then we kind of run out of the immortals, after a while. That's what goes on in boxing. Listen, there are other names too. There's a James Toney. He just got in. He was pretty erratic. A Sugar Shane Mosley, a Hall of Famer. Didn't he have a PD issue or something as well?
So did Tony.
James Toney have one. Didn't Roy Jones have one? Yet they're in the Hall of Fame.
But Jack, when I watch those guys fight, they're Hall of Famers. James Toney is the Hall of Fame fighter. He did it at an extremely high level. So did Roy Jones, and so did Shane Mosley until he moved up in weight. His case is probably the weakest of those three. But can anybody watch prime Roy Jones and say, hey, this guy's like somebody we've never seen before? The same thing with Toney. And at lightweight, Mosley had the same case. So with me, it's who you fought, how you did. I don't care about being undefeated. I don't care about that. I can think of a lot of guys or a few guys who are undefeated. When I think of Hall of Famers, I don't think of them. So anyhow, it'll be interesting. And then when the ballot comes out, we'll be able to kick the names around and we can have our own little skirmishes about that. Now let's get to the results. I didn't see a lot of boxing. I saw Regis Prograis fight. I didn't see the Parker Ryder fight. You said you saw a majority of the Dillian White fight. Now, there was some controversy there, Jack, about the scoring. And guys that we both respect, I saw what they said, and I didn't get a feel for the fight as who really won it. My take is this. From what I read, Dillian White is on the backside.
Dillian White was on the backside going into this fight. He was a completely faded fight. I don't want to say a shot fight. I mean, Dillian White was a good, solid fight and never anything special. Let's remember, he got knocked out by Povetkin, like a couple of years ago. And then in the rematch, he stops Povetkin. But Povetkin was
But he's fought everybody who is somebody in that division.
For a couple of times. Yeah, but Dillian White, if you saw him fight Tyson Fury, he had nothing at all there. Nothing. He didn't even mount a
that was dreadful. He made it so easy for Fury. It wasn't even funny. I never expected that.
Right. So they gave him a fight of James Franklin, a fighter with an unbeaten record. In boxing, unbeaten records, as you know, aren't as impressive as it sounds. Figuring, okay, he's going to win this fight, and the plan is to match him with Anthony Joshua in the UK. And because of Joshua's popularity and White's to a smaller extent, they would get a massive crowd, maybe like 60,000 or whatever. I'm just throwing out an approximate number.
And they'll be able to sell it because White did have Joshua shook before Joshua got him.
Yeah, it would be Joshua's way back, his first fight back. And Joshua hasn't lost any of his box office appeal, even though he lost to Usyk in the rematch, at least in the UK. In reality, he's as big as he's ever been. And all he needs is one win to jumpstart his career again and get it really back on track. And White would have been the perfect opponent. He's promoted by Eddie Hearn, who promotes Joshua. Easy fight to make.
Right.
So who would have thought James, Franklin upsets the script. He fights him close. But White gets the W. Based on that, they can spin the fight.
They can sell both of them. So now they have two guys. Exactly. It was kind of the perfect scenario.
White said after the fight, well, he was unbeaten. So White could say, I beat an unbeaten fight. I handed him his first defeat. And the average Joe Schmo will go, yeah, he did beat an unbeaten guy. And White could say, I took him too lightly. But Joshua, I'm going to be motivated for this. You start the hype machine and fans buy into it.
Jack, it was the perfect scenario because Franklin proved that he's at least the equal of White. He's a new name. Joshua has already defeated White. So if they make Joshua and Franklin, like you said, Joshua's a star. It's somebody new. And at this point, I don't think he's there yet, but I think that fans are starting to look at Joshua a little bit like they looked at Vladimir Klitschko. Skilled, can punch, can box, has the whole thing, the whole repertoire, but could be a little fragile mentally. So on any given night, he could be caught and he could be upset, and that's probably how they would sell Joshua versus Franklin.
And I could tell you, Frank, there's no telling how things play out by the end of the year. Because if things go the way we think they're going to go, let's say Fury does fight Usyk by the spring, and it's quite possible that's going to happen. And Fury beats Usyk, and then Fury retires. He just doesn't want to know from it anymore. And it really appears that he's retired. You could match Joshua after he gets done with Dillian Whyte, and make no mistake about it, he will knock Dillian Whyte out again. You could match him with Deontay Wilder, and you want to know something, Frank? That could be a fight for the vacant title in a certain sense, because if Usyk loses it in the ring, you know, he might go down to number 3, and Joshua, by beating Dillian Whyte, could be number 2. Wilder could be number 1 contender. You know what I'm saying? The way the pieces of the puzzle go.
Jack, I agree with all that, and it's funny. You see different guys say different things, you read different things, and there is a market for the Wilder Joshua fight, and it seems they can make that at any time, and I do think we're going to see it. Let's wrap up the results. Now, I saw a Prograis fight. I'm a big Prograis fan. I like him a lot. I always have. I thought his fight with Josh Taylor was very close. He's kind of been on the shelf and not talked about for the last 3 years. I thought he looked real good against Zepeda. 2 southpaws. Prograis can punch. He reached back when he had to. I saw him shook for the first time I've ever seen in any of his fights. And, you know, with Taylor fighting Jack Catterall, I'm going to take Taylor in that fight, Jack. But I'll tell you what, I think Prograis is as good as any 140-pounder in the country. And it seems that he's either probably going to fight Jose Ramirez, and there's talk of him fighting Lopez. And I'll tell you this right now. I have always liked Prograis over both of those guys. He didn't show me anything the other night to back off of that. I thought it was a good night for him, and I look forward to seeing him next time out.
You know, Frank, I'm not even sure who exactly is promoting Prograis, you know, right now. Is it the group that's promoting Terence Crawford? I mean, Prograis, he's basically been on the shelf, it seems, a while.
Right.
I mean, I interviewed him a little over 5 years ago in the summer 2017, and I came away really impressed. He was on the upswing, and he loses his title to, you know, Josh Taylor. But it was a great fight that could have gone either way.
Right.
Sometimes you lose, but you actually gain a little, even in the loss, as long as you could be active and follow up. And he never seriously followed up. He'd periodically show up, win fights, make some money. And now he beats Zepeda. And if Prograis wants to be a true star in the sport, it's got to happen now.
And he must stay at 140, Jack. He cannot, and he says he's going to stay there, and he felt comfortable there. I don't think he's going to move up, but he must stay at 140. He cannot go up and play with some of those welterweights. So, Prograis, this is his time. And let's face it, if Taylor beats Catterall, there's a big fight, a rematch between those two. And if Catterall wins, that's also a big fight.
Yeah, him and somehow Prograis and Teofimo Lopez seems to be the best matchup I'd like to see for him, because part of it's promoting the personalities. Prograis could talk a pretty good game himself.
Yes, he can.
You know, and he works out with the Charlo brothers in Houston, you know, Stack groups. So, you know, he gets like a lot of good sparring in.
Now, I didn't see the Taylor fight. Did you?
We're talking, what Wait, are we
No,
talking
Jack, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
And
talking about Parker and Ryder. I'm
No,
sorry.
I didn't see
I
that.
didn't see that either, but Ryder wins TKO 5. Parker hurt his hand.
Ryder,
Are they talking about Canelo fighting him now?
well, Ryder has 2 fights to his credit that stand out. He lost a highly disputed decision to Callum Smith, who Canelo beat decisively. Okay.
Right.
And then he won a disputed decision over Danny Jacobs, a faded version of Danny Jacobs.
But they're both quality fighters.
Quality fighters.
And going the distance with Callum Smith is special. Because Callum Smith, I actually thought had a shot with Canelo, even though I didn't pick him.
Ryder is a quality fighter, but it's cherry picking by Canelo. Perfect guy. Canelo can beat this guy. He poses a little bit of a threat to Canelo, but not nearly as much as the elite guy. So Canelo's going to give all this big talk. Did you hear what Dimitri Bivol said? I saw you commented on it. I saw a post. Bivol says he's willing to shut Canelo's mouth up once and for all. I'll go to 168. Let's fight. He's calling Canelo out, saying he's going to drop a division to just shut him up. You want to know something? Canelo is delusional in a way. He'll go around saying he thinks he won the Bivol fight, the first fight.
That's a joke.
He's making himself look bad.
But did you notice that Bivol said Canelo was a harder puncher than Ramirez, which kind of surprised me?
Yeah, well, if you saw,
and I don't think he was saying that just to talk. I think he really believed it.
You want to know something? But based on how they fought Bivol, Ramirez threw a lot of punches. They just didn't seem that hard compared to Canelo. Canelo puts a little more clout.
See, Canelo, when he punched, he loaded up. He punched in spurts, but when he punched, he tried to do some damage. But he doesn't have it at that weight. At 168, I don't care if Bivol comes down to 168, Jack. Great. Hope he makes a lot of money. But I know this much: the light heavyweight title better not be on the line.
No, it would. It's 170.
That would be a total farce.
A total farce if they have a world title at a catch weight. That's ridiculous.
No, we already saw Canelo can't beat 175. Let's see if Bivol wants to go to 168 and become the junior middleweight champ. I'm cool with that.
Canelo doesn't want. Canelo wants to avenge his win from Bivol in the worst way, but he's kind of scared to fight him because deep down
he knows it's a problem.
It's a major problem. But
I will say this though, Jack. At 168, I would probably still pick Bivol, but Canelo will be more in the fight because I don't care what Bivol says. He's not as good at 68 as he is a light heavyweight. As I said countless times, guy turned pro 179 in 2014, asking him to drop 10 pounds, 11 pounds. 9 years later, I'm not sure that that's in his best interest. Okay, that wraps up what happened this week. All right, there's 2 fights coming up this weekend. They're both trilogies. Let's get the easy one out of the way. Derek Chisora is fighting heavyweight champ Tyson Fury for the third time. They fought in 2011. Fury won in the unanimous decision. They fought in 2014. Chisora's corner stopped the fight after the 10th round. Since then, Fury, to me, has gotten better, more confident, more sure of himself. And I just don't see any way Chisora, who's had all the wars, I don't really see how this is a competitive fight. Do you?
No, not at all. Not if Tyson Fury shows up.
And that's a good point because, like Ali, if he's not fighting the guy he sees as a threat, we don't get a good version.
Yeah, and he has a lot, and this is sad to say, Fury has a lot of emotional issues, a lot. Okay, and we wish him the best because depression's a difficult thing to deal with, and reports saw that he undergoes that. And who knows how Fury is trained for this fight. I mean, it could be deceiving. People could see him in the gym a few weeks working out hard, and they could think he's really prepared for the fight. But we don't know how much he's done in between. his preparation, how focused he is on Chisora. Say what you want about Chisora. He comes to fight. He's a
War Chisora, there's no doubt about it. But, Jack, don't you think a little bit of the Fury issue is, Ali used to do that too. He would act like he was not taking the guy serious, but he had plenty of workouts in the middle of the night when nobody was around. And I think Fury is just too smart. He's making too much money. I mean, Sylvester Stallone in Britain the other day called him the greatest heavyweight ever. He has a lot to lose if he were to lose to Chisora.
Fury should beat Chisora without any difficulty. Should beat him easy, okay? One-sided. Stop Chisora, let's say, in about 6-7 rounds, okay?
That's about what I was thinking, Jack. I don't see Fury. I'm sorry. I don't see Chisora having a tool to beat him with. I mean, Chisora's good. Doesn't have a great chin. Gets tired. Fury he just has every advantage. I'll be very shocked and actually be disappointed if Fury needs all 12 rounds.
Frank, just want a quick remark, a quick response to the remark you made. Oh, Ali would work out in the middle of the night. What dedication? No. Ali was one of the great underachievers in boxing history.
Oh, he was, but for some fights, he acted like he wasn't training, Jack, and he did have workouts in the middle of the night, and then the next day he would be seen drinking a bunch of soda saying, I don't have to train for this guy.
No, we saw a number of fights such as Jimmy Young where he was undertrained. He wasn't ready for a number of fights the way he should have been. He didn't show the dedication he should have shown for a fair number of fights. Had he trained like an athlete should have, really trained hard all along, he did for Foreman. Exactly. He would have been even greater than he was.
And Jack, I totally agree with you. And I think if he was a meaner guy instead of more of an athlete, I also think he would have been better. But I get your point. He left a lot on the table. But Jack, let's remember something. Ali wanted to quit boxing and retire way before he did, but he was making too much money and supporting too many people, and he couldn't.
Yeah, it became like a way of life. You pick up the money, you continue, you're on. How can I turn down a multi-million-dollar payday or whatever, amount he was going to get? So it became a job. He'd be active, and he paid the price for it later on, unfortunately.
Okay, we both like Fury. Not much of a risk in taking that fight or picking Fury to win. He should win. I guess the interest will be, what does he do after he beats Chisora? How does he parlay that? Does he grab the mic and start calling Usyk a middleweight and Joshua a bodybuilder and selling those fights? It'll be fun to see, but I don't think the fight will be very competitive. Now,
I think he fights Usyk. Unlike some of these other fighters in other divisions, I don't have to give their names, big name fighters. I really think Fury does go in with Usyk.
I would agree with that. I don't think that's a reach. Jack, there's also a trilogy fight with Estrada and Chocolatito Gonzalez. And it's a huge fight. Bantamweight division, junior bantamweight division. These guys fought 2 times before. And I'm not sure, I'm having a hard time picking this fight because Estrada is 32, Gonzalez is 35. I think they're both shop worn, but Gonzalez is just so good, Jack. And, I picked him the last time they fought, and I was just surprised of how much struggle it was for him to win. I'm going to go with Gonzalez.
Won the second fight.
Right. I picked him to win, but I couldn't believe what a struggle it was for him to win. And Jack, in all honesty, in 2017, when Chocolatito lost 2 fights to Rungvissoy, even though I thought he won the fight and went the distance, he was knocked dead in the rematch, and I thought that he was done. But look, he is an all-time great, Hall of Famer. He's just too good for me to count him out. I think every time these guys fight, it will be close. But I'm going to reverse my pick this time, and I'm going to go with Chocolatito. Because I actually think he's a little fresher than Estrada.
Yeah, I wonder, do we go on emotion picking Chocolatito to win this fight or not because of his reputation, for sentimental reasons? Because I'm going the same way, but I'm not sure. The only thing I'm confident
Estrada looked shop-worn, though, beating Quartz in his last fight.
It's going to be a close fight. That's the only thing I could say with a degree of confidence. Okay, I think it'll go the distance, and I don't think it'll be one-sided by any means. But the last fight, I didn't think Chocolatito lost the fight. I think a draw probably would have been the fairest result, but I didn't think Estrada.
No, I don't think he lost either.
Estrada had a favorable call from the judges, and I wouldn't be surprised this one wound up a draw, and they go out of the fourth time even. But I'll go with Chocolatito on a split.
Jack? Has there been a guy who's been more fun to watch than Chocolatito? I love watching him. I love watching him on the inside and the angles, how he rolls with punches and counters.
His idol was Alexis Arguello. So who was the greatest fighter to ever come out of Nicaragua, Chocolatito or Alexis Arguello?
Boy, I hate to make that pick, Jack, because I really like them both. I'd have to really think about that. Off the top of my head, I don't think I can say for sure. The only thing I think that goes against Chocolatito is because he's so small and the increments in weight from the win titles are just a few pounds here and there, where Arguello started at featherweight and did go up to 140. I think that weighs good on Arguello's part. So, but I can't pick. I'll just say this. They were both fun to watch. One guy was the consummate boxer puncher in Arguello. Arguello did everything the way it's supposed to be done. He's the textbook. Chocolatito, he's an attacker. And I guess you could say that he pretty much could be the textbook on an attacker too. Very gifted guy. The angles he punches, you never know what's coming. He changes it up. I hope that he wins. I just hope that he doesn't get too brave and fights Inouye, because I think that's where it ends, and it could end badly.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, but Stephen Fulton's been calling Inouye out.
I saw that.
And
if I were him, Jack, I'd do the same thing.
But that's a fight. I'd rather see Stephen Fulton in with Inouye than Chocolatito.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because at least Fulton brings size and strength to offset the skill and power.
I don't think Chocolatito could beat Inouye unless Chocolatito.
No, Jack.
Clock back 8-9 years, then who knows? If Chocolatito could turn the clock back 8-9 years and he could be the Chocolatito we knew at his absolute peak, all of a sudden maybe I would pick him to beat Inouye. But this version of Chocolatito, while good, is a diminished version, even if he beats Estrada.
I hope they never fight, Jack. I think it's a bad style clash for Chocolatito. I think Inouye would enter that fight so confident. I don't think Chocolatito would have much of a chance. Here's another topic, Jack, we can touch on. We both, and again, we both like the same guy in the trilogies. We both like Fury. We both like Chocolatito, but we look forward to the Chocolatito fight much more than the Fury fight. Jack, Terrence Crawford is also fighting in 2 weeks. I've read where he said he already has half of the $10 million in his account for this. I can't, it's what, BLK is the promotion company. I'm not sure I buy that. And Jack, you know what? I want to buy the fight, but I'm actually afraid. I don't know what's going to come on this network I know nothing about, but I'm going to try to buy the fight because I think until he loses, I still think Terrence Crawford's the best fighter in boxing.
Yeah, that fight's on December 10th, correct,
Frank?
Right.
Not this coming week and the following.
Right, but the same night on ESPN, Teofimo Lopez is fighting Sander Martin. So you could get kind of free boxing as opposed to paying for it in a certain sense. But Crawford's saying he has half the 10 million. I'm extremely skeptical.
I hope he does, but I'm skeptical too.
I'm very skeptical. Now, but someone might say, why would he say that? Because it helps his bargaining position down the road to say, oh, I made all this money for the fight. I'm making all this. It makes it look like, oh, I don't need Errol Spence. The heck with you guys. I could make a bundle elsewhere.
He could be playing that game, no doubt.
Maybe he really is getting the 10 million unknown to us. But I'm extremely skeptical as you are.
Well, we'll talk about that next week. I'm sure there'll be a lot of news regarding that. I really do, Jones, Pat, Jack, because I want to see Crawford fight. I enjoy watching him more than any fighter in the sport. Boots is making a case, but right now it's still Crawford, so I'll watch him anytime I can. I think his career is wasted away to a degree, but I hope he can still resurrect it.
Frank, he's going to be on some people's pound-for-pound list as number one. Maybe
he's mine.
Of a few years even. So when a guy is number one pound for pound for a few years, you think this is an all-time great, because things like that are reserved for all-time greats. The way Crawford's going, if his career keeps going the way it is, even if he retires unbeaten in, let's say, 3 years, he's going to do it without a defining fight. He's not going to be considered an all-time great.
Jack, I can't argue that. I think he definitely would make the Hall of Fame. Would he become an all-time great? No. But I will say this. Based on what I've seen, I think he could live with the guys that you and I both agree are all-time greats. I think he could live with Leonard. Do I think he would beat him? No. But I think he could live with him and give him as good of a fight as anybody else has. Same thing with Hearns and that class of guys. I think he could live with Emil Griffith or Napoli's, but we can't give him the benefit of the doubt based on the resume. But he's clearly a Hall of Famer for what he's done. But his career is really going down. He really needs a Spence fight, and if he can't get that, he might have to beat Boots. And at that time, I don't think he'll be ready for Boots. And before we go to our favorite part of the show, when we start discussing hypothetical matchups, shall we announce what's going to happen next week?
Yes, I'll announce it next week, Frank. I misunderstood your directions. I started off before the show blaming you for misleading me, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you were upfront and I misunderstood. It's on me. When we're talking about hypothetical matchups in regard to Bob Foster, and we talked about Dwight Muhammad Qawi against him, and I agree Qawi would beat him. I was thinking that Qawi was at his peak at cruiserweight, who fought Evander Holyfield the first time, fighting a Bob Foster as a light heavyweight. I prorated Qawi, but judging Qawi strictly as a light heavyweight against Bob Foster, and judging all those other light heavyweights of your era, who around your patch of the woods, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, Marvin Johnson, Yaki Lopez, who visited Saad Muhammad. I think Foster at light heavyweight, and Michael Spinks, he obliterates all of them at light heavyweight. But that's not an argument for tonight.
Wait, Foster beats Michael Spinks?
Absolutely. But next week, we're going to announce we're going to have a tag team match. I want all the viewers to know. Russell Peltz believes in you, Frank. He thinks the way you do. The great Philadelphia promoter who just
Russell knows what he's looking at and talking about.
In the cut eye. He's going to be on your side, but joining me in this debate is going to be boxing historian Dom Majeski. It's going to be 2 against 2, no referee, no holds barred, and all. And we're going to go at it in regard to Bob Foster. Okay, Frank, I don't think we could change your view, but we're going to put Russell in his place, if not you at least. Majeski will take care of Russell. Me and you, we might have to have a few more sessions on this show before we come to resolution. But Majeski's going for a quick knockout of Russell in this debate.
Well, Jack, that's going to be fun.
Next Monday for the fireworks.
Will they be on for the whole show?
I could get them. We could get them, but I don't know. Will we discuss Foster the whole show? Maybe we'll get to another topic after.
Okay, because we'll have some results to talk about, obviously.
Dom Majeski is sick and tired of people questioning Forster's greatness, because according to Majeski, Bob Forster's the greatest light heavyweight of all time.
I couldn't disagree more. And I look forward to that debate. I mean, come on. I mean, Bob Foster had dynamite in that left hand.
We'll get it next week. Let's get it. Let's
all right.
Next weekend. I mean, next Monday. Next Monday.
All right, Jack. That'll be fun. Russell, bring your A game. All right, let's go. Here we go. It is hypothetical time. Number 1, middleweights. Gene Fullmer, Marvin Hagler. Saw some guys on my page discussing this today. I thought they both made pretty good cases, but at the end of the day, I don't have any doubt who wins this. Go ahead, Jack. You go first, and I'll just comment on what you say. On what you think.
I love the passion on those comments on your post. You know, I was reading them, and I love the passion. You know, Hagler has been down this road to an extent. The closest guys who he fought compared to Fulmer, Mustafa Hamsho and Juan Roldan.
Vito.
Vito. None of them with the pot are as good as Fulmer, quite as good. I mean, Vito, you could make an argument at his best is the closest in caliber, perhaps. Hamsho's think he would rough you up the way Fulmer did, but then again, Hamsho fought mostly like Fulmer. Fulmer was known to fight really rough and tough. Vito was to throw a lot of punches, not so much rough and tough. So Hamsho, all that roughhouse stuff, Hagler solved with Hamsho. He solved it with Roldan, but Fulmer was a better quality fighter. He could jab. He would win, but he would win ugly, Fulmer. And Fulmer was in with a better caliber of competition. I mean, listen, Hagler's middleweight could be had. Listen, he fought Roberto Duran, who wasn't at his best, a puffed up guy from a lighter division who did give him a hard time, even though Hagler won 10 of the 15 rounds in my book. But with that said,
but Duran is really slick, Jack, and made Hagler fight out of his comfort zone by forcing Hagler to attack the whole fight. And even though people look at Marvin Hagler and they see a bald head and they see muscles, Hagler was more of a counterpuncher and a technician than he was a brawler.
This will be a replay. You know, there'll be a replay, except I think it'll go the distance. John Mugabe against Hagler, something like that. Fulmer would be bringing it. It would be a rough fight, but Hagler's overall skills would take over. Hagler would box him a lot. Hagler wouldn't go after Fulmer. He would let Fulmer come to him, outbox him enough,
and then use his feet and get away,
right?
And then set up and make Fulmer have to restart.
And win 10 of the 15 rounds. You know, Marvin Hagler. Very hard fight for Hagler. Tough fight. When the fight's over, Hagler probably, you know, like, whoa, I don't want to go through this again, even though he would have won 10 of the 15 rounds. But Hagler with room to spare by decision.
Jack, I agree. Fulmer fought better people at 160. I don't think neither guy could knock the other guy out. Fulmer had some power, but not enough to dent Hagler. I don't even think Hagler would try to stop Fulmer. I think he would box him. I think it would look like probably the first Anafermo fight. But I will just say this, and this is just for argument's sake, and my pick is Hagler. My pick is Hagler, like you said, 10-5. I don't think when the fight ends, there's no doubt who won. However, if you think about it, if Anafermo and Hamsho can push Hagler like they did, Fulmer is not totally in over his head. The problem is, as I see it is, the one thing he can't do is he's just not offensively good enough to neutralize anything Hagler does. And the fact that he can't hurt him, can't make him do anything he didn't want to do, I don't think there's any way that Hagler wouldn't win. But for the guys that want to pick Fulmer, I mean, there's a little bit of a case that he's probably better than the guys that Hagler fought and better than the guys that gave him trouble. But at the end of the day, Hagler's skill and durability are the difference. So we agree, Hagler decisions, Fulmer at their best.
And people forget how tough Hagler was, okay? He could go to a plan B if he had to, and it could be kind of like an alley fight in close if he had to, if Fulmer was able to smother him. Let's say Fulmer could get inside and force Hagler to fight his fight and all the roughhouse tactics. Marvin could fight really well on the inside.
Hagler had the chin, Jack. He would go in there and do that too. When he had to get down and dirty, he could do it. And the thing that stands out about Hagler with me is, you know, we talk about guys who had a great chin. We know their names. But how many times did you ever see Marvin Hagler hurt? I'll tell you, for me, Hearns buzzed him for a second in the first round. I thought Mugabe got his attention real good, but not hurt him bad, where Hagler had to back off. And that would leave, that's two, Hearns, Mugabe, and Cyclone Hart probably rocked Hagler the most. But I never saw Hagler close to being in trouble where I thought, you know what, he better hang on or he better get away. The guy had an unbelievable chin. So if Hearns and Mugabe and Hart can't dent him, Fulmer can't.
Agreed.
All right, Jack, number two. And I think this is a very tough one. I think I know where you'll go. But at lightweight, you heard me, right? Lightweight, I don't want the Bob Foster thing again.
I'm not making the same mistake.
135. Alexis Arguello against Esteban de Jesus.
Yeah, that's an easy fight for me to pick.
Easy?
Easy. And I'm going to say, and easy on top of this. I was at Madison Square Garden 50 years ago, November 17th, 1972.
When he beat Duran.
Jesus beat Duran. But that was a Roberto Duran who won the world lightweight title 5 months before.
In June.
Duran. It wasn't the same Duran. It was the same thing that later happened with Leonard. After being in great shape and upsetting Leonard in the first fight, the second fight he wasn't nearly in the same form or condition or dedication. It was a non-title match against De Jesus. Duran then stopped De Jesus twice after that. De Jesus was a heck of a fighter. Don't get me wrong.
Jack, how many rounds did those fights go when Duran stopped them?
When I think it was 11, the second fight, and 12. Ironically, in the second fight in the rematch, De Jesus dropped Duran in the first round and hurt him.
He dropped him twice, yes.
Yeah.
He dropped him in the first round in the first two fights.
But the rematch was in Panama, the second fight.
Right, in 74.
Duran came out blazing the way he did against Buchanan.
And he ran into that hook.
And De Jesus responded by knocking him down and hurting him. Duran was hurt, make no mistake. He got up, recuperated quickly, and then, and then his relentless assault finally did De Jesus in. But something about Arguello. Arguello was maybe, and let me throw this at you, Frank, your opinion. Did you ever see a more fundamentally sound boxer than Arguello?
Jack, I just said he was the textbook. He was like Joe Louis. He did everything the way it was meant to be done, and everything he did had a purpose and was to set up the next move. I totally agree. So you say Arguello easy?
You want to know something? No, I take it back. You want to know why? You said it lightweight. Arguello was at his best at junior lightweight. Now I'm starting to think, are we talking about the Arguello that beat Jim Watt?
Talking about the Arguello that fought Jim Watt, Jose Ramirez, Mancini.
I still go with Arguello. I no longer say it's easy because I think he was at his best at junior lightweight, Arguello. So now I agree
with that, Jack. I like Arguello by decision. I'm not sure, though, that Arguello would be as tough for Duran at 135 as De Jesus was, just based on style. Arguello has to go straight. He's not going to back Duran up. But I think Arguello's length, his perfection and precision, his power, straight punching. I think that's the difference, and I think Aguayo wins the decision.
Let me throw you a quick curveball, Frank. Ken Buchanan, after he lost the title to Duran, he didn't get an immediate rematch. And after De Jesus beat Duran,
he never got a rematch.
Well, he never did. I'm sorry, never did. There was talk of De Jesus fighting Buchanan. Buchanan was
what a fight!
Peak, and
what
De
a
Jesus
fight!
Was at his peak. Unfortunately, they never quite got around to that. It's interesting who would have won that fight.
Jack, I've often thought about that fight. Gun to my head, because I want to tell you that I'm really not sure and can't pick, but I don't like sitting on the fence. So I'm going to say, gun to my head, I think De Jesus was a tad better. I would take De Jesus.
The opposite. I would have given an edge to Buchanan at his peak.
Okay.
You'll never know. Well, what do you have next?
All right, Jack, we'll go through these a little quick because some of these are easy. At 147, Roberto Duran against Thomas Hearns. I'll go first. I think it's a rerun of their fight, but instead of 2 rounds, it might take 4 or 5, maybe 6. This is just a style matchup that Duran could fight Hearns 10 times, as Joe Frazier could fight George Foreman 10 times. He could never beat him because Duran, like Frazier, has to be inside to be effective. Frazier fought one guy who he couldn't get inside on, and that was Foreman. Duran had the same problem against Hearns. Maybe at 147, it takes Hearns a little longer because 154 may have been his best weight. And if Hearns wants to, I think he could outbox Duran from range. I see no case for Duran. I like Hearns. And decision or knockout either way, but Hearns wins.
We're putting too much emphasis on Duran's fight with Hearns where he got knocked out in the second round. That was an out of shape Duran, but shame on him. It's his fault to be out of shape. It was a pudgy Duran. That was just a shell of a fighter.
Jack, he wasn't tired, though, in the first round, and he couldn't do nothing the way Hearns came out. He had nothing. I never saw Duran have the look of fear in his face is when Hearns missed him with a couple right hands, and you could tell he didn't want to be there.
I remember what Emmanuel Stewart said before the Hearns-Duran fight. He picked this guy, Hearns, to win by decision. He says, I think we're going to win by decision. No one knocks Duran out. So he had it in his mind. It was going to go the distance. Hearns was going to outbox him. I'm thinking the Duran who fought Leonard in Montreal. That Duran coming after Hearns, that's not going to be a quick blitz. I think Hearns would have to settle in and maybe get Duran in 10 or 11 rounds when the attack slowed down. Withstand the attack, box him, keep away, survive, and ultimately get Duran later in the fight.
Okay, but you pick Hearns, right?
Hearns, yeah.
So if we take Duran from the first Leonard fight against Hearns from the first Leonard fight, we both like Hearns.
I would have to like Hearns to prevail, yeah. In that
okay, I think Hearns stops him late.
Well, Hearns faded in the first Leonard fight, but I think he would get him in about.
But he wouldn't fade against Duran because he wouldn't have to go after him like he did Leonard. All right, Jack, let's move on. And this will set up next week real nice. Harold Johnson against Bob Foster. Are you listening, Don Majeski?
No, we got to say, okay, this will set up next week. Fair enough. Foster by a knockout. Okay?
Okay.
I mean, I have a ton of respect for Harold Johnson. A ton of respect. Is Harold Johnson an all-time great?
Yes.
Well, if you say yes, he fought Archie Moore 5 times. He lost 4 out of 5. Okay.
And how many guys did Foster fight that Harold Johnson would have taken to school?
Well, we're going a little early on the next week, and I'm going to say
no, this is Harold Johnson against Foster.
Yeah, but I'd have to make a case over Foster's whole career.
Okay, so you would take all right, then we'll move on to the next, but just
Harold Johnson stylistically, this is what we could talk about stylistically. Harold Johnson was a wonderful master boxer.
Boxer, right.
Boxer. How is he going to fight Foster? He's not going to beat him from the outside. Foster had the
Jack, Mike Quarry won 3.5 rounds against Bob Foster fighting from the outside.
He didn't win any rounds against Foster. He ran around.
He was moving, and he was in the fight moving. One punch changed that fight.
Mike Quarry maybe won one of the first 3 rounds with Foster just pursuing him.
But Jack, the point is, though, he had the tide stemmed. He just didn't have the corresponding offense to give Foster anything to worry about.
All
right, we'll fight next week, but you like Foster, right?
Yes.
Okay, I like Harold Johnson to give him an ulcer.
But be sure that fight comes up next week with Russell and Majeski.
Okay, well, I'll definitely make a note of that. Okay. All right, Jack, moving on. Cleveland Williams against Ron Lyle. I'll go first because it's easy. To me, Lyle was a better boxer, equal to, harder puncher, had a better chin, and it might look a little bit like Liston's fights with Williams. Williams might go a little longer with Lyle than he did Liston, but I think Lyle knocks Williams out.
Yeah, let's visualize how Lyle would do against Sonny Liston, and that would make it a little easier to predict the fight because Williams fought Liston twice, and he really laid some big punches on Liston's chin.
He did.
Force, but Liston just overpowered Williams and knocked him out a couple of times.
More durable.
More durable. If Lyle was in there with Liston, could he have lasted longer? Would Liston have gotten him as quickly? I don't know.
Based on what Lyle did with Foreman, I think he goes rounds with Liston.
Lyle could. My feeling was Lyle could box a little better than Williams. It was a little better ring generalship. So based on
better fundamentally, doesn't load up, has more than a left hook, has an uppercut in the right hand.
Yeah, Lyle by decision or maybe late stoppage.
Okay, so we agree on that. I like Lyle too. Probably 6-7 rounds, but Lyle stops Liston. All right, Jack, this is a toughie.
Williams. You'll have.
I'm sorry, Cleveland Williams. Thank you. Yes. All right, Jack. This will be our last one. At featherweight, and I already know who you're picking. Willie Pep versus Salvador Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, Willie Pep.
Willie Pep?
Willie Pep he fought everybody during his time. He fought the elite, every single elite guy, and he beat them one after the other. He was magnificent in and out. Sanchez, tragically, we don't know how great he could have been.
We may have never seen his best.
Exactly. But Sanchez, he was in some close fights, though. He was in some close fights, but he ultimately would prevail. He was a great, great fighter. But Willie Pep, I mean, I remember talking to Angelo Dundee, and he's telling me, Pep would have licked guys like Morales, Barrera, the whole bit. And I just think Willie Pep is master boxer. So he dart in and out with Sanchez. Sanchez wasn't quite as physical as Sandy, sadly. Wasn't a freak of nature. And Willie may have been past his prime at that point.
He wasn't the puncher that Sadler was, Jack.
Let me turn it to you because you only have a minute to go left in the show.
Jack, I would go. I rate Pep higher, but I think head to head, I think stylistically, I actually think that Sanchez could turn the tables on Pep more than the opposite. The fight goes a distance, and I just think that Sanchez may have been a little bit of a crisper puncher, every bit as versatile, equal stamina. I just think their head-to-head matchup, I think Sanchez could impose himself enough to eke out a very, very close decision. But I do think style-wise, I could see the case why some would pick Pep because he probably makes Sanchez fight as the aggressor. That's not Sal at his best. He was better when his opponents came to him. But I think Sanchez had just enough to eke it out.
Okay, Frank, a good show, and I look forward to next week. I'm Majeski myself taking you in Palson.
We are going to tear you guys apart. You know why, Jack? Because we're on the right side, and no matter how good you and Don are, we're on the right side. And see, you can't overcome that because the case and the facts are on our side.
Okay, till next week. Okay, everyone, all the best.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.